Afternoon, everyone, and welcome to today's Way Forward workshop, Leader Lunch Break, where we are thrilled to welcome Eric Gordon. Eric has served as the CEO of CMSD since June of 2011. I met him several months prior during his 4-year tenure as the district's chief academic officer. We were both at an academic pep rally in the parking lot outside Whitney Young Leadership Academy. As the students stood in front of their peers to encourage and celebrate academic attainment, Eric jumped up and joined them in front of all assembled. They beamed and they cheered louder at his urging. His enthusiasm matched and then exceeded theirs. It's this enthusiasm, energy, dedication, and advocacy that has been manifest unbridled since he came to Cleveland. He has cheered for them, consoled them, challenged them, and always inspired them. While his time at the helm of CMSD will come to a close on Friday, the gift to all of our scholars and our greater Cleveland community is that he will continue to lead them to success through his work at Cuyahoga Community College. His accomplishments are numerous and impact on the community is great, most notably Say Yes and an increased graduation rate. But his biggest impact is in how he mentored his kids. And yes, he's been known to drive them to college and help get them settled. He always treated each one as the valued individual that they are. We are proud to call him an alum of Leadership Cleveland 2013. Eric, thank you for making time to join us today.
Thank you, and good afternoon, everybody. I do know this is a leader lunch break, so please do feel free to eat your lunch. Enjoy it. I'm really glad to be with you. I see so many friends and colleagues and partners and our own CMSD people, some Tri-C people. So Marianne gave me the great charge and opportunity to take about 20 minutes to summarize 16 years of work in the district and my future. So that gives us about a minute a year. So I've decided to try to do that through a little bit of storytelling rather than a more formal presentation. And so we're going to dive right in. Marianne mentioned that I came to Cleveland in 2007 as the chief academic officer. I actually came in October of 2007, October 1st. That's a terrible time to come into a role of academic officer because the academic plan is already in place, right? And so it was a time where I was coming to learn, but I wasn't really in the position to immediately contribute. Unfortunately, that didn't turn out to be true because on October 10th of 2007, as those of us who've been in Cleveland know, we had a student go into Success Tech High School, shoot 2 teachers, shoot 2 students, and take his life. And I'll tell you that the first call I got was from my district in Columbus, who said, "You can come home. We haven't filled your job. You don't have to be there." And what I said to them is, no, this is why I have to be here. That we have to do work to make sure this never happens again. And we still talk about the Success Tech shooting when so many people try to make these go away, because if we ever stop talking about it and stop acting against it, we will allow it again. And so my first year actually was what got social emotional learning such a presence here in Cleveland in a response to that moment. And knowing that, yes, we can put hardware in urban schools and increasingly lots of other schools, but if we don't figure out the humanware problem, the social emotional problems, we weren't ever actually going to be successful. So I got to spend that first year with something highly valuable and productive to do. But those of you who know me well know that I always carry personal goals. And so I'm going to give some light to some of those. As I rounded out that first year in Cleveland in 2007, 2008, I actually have it still in my basement. I have a cardboard box, a paper box, because that's something we have in schools, where I took the corners off the box, got a marker and wrote and stood in front of the board building and have a picture of me with a sign that says continuous improvement or bust. Continuous improvement at the time was a C on our state report card. And I knew that in 2 years, we could move the district to a C. I had in my desk at the time a resignation letter that I had written and sealed and put in my desk and was ready to turn in if we didn't make that goal by the end of the 2009-2010 school year. So that first year was all about the social emotional learning. The second year now, I'm finally truly the academic officer. We get academic watch, a D that year. The third year, 2009, 2010, we're really doing well. Things are going really well. And then you remember the recession happened. So as we close out that school year, the district closed 17 schools and laid off hundreds of people. And I watched everything that I had just worked for over the past 2 years blow up. The teachers we trained got laid off or got reassigned to new grades, or the teams that we had built had gotten dispersed across the district, and all of the academic work that we had put in place basically disintegrated. So that year, we met continuous improvement. And I actually have another picture where I stood in front of the old board building and burned that letter that I didn't have to turn in. But I also knew that what we had met was gone because we were now cutting our way to prosperity. And if you remember that time in 2010 and then again in 2011, over the course of that 2-year period, we closed 23 schools and laid off 1,400 people. And we were truly in the depths of the recession and trying to cut our way to prosperity. So that was my quick journey through the CAO that you've hit 4 years and 4 minutes now. And so then June 2011 comes along. The board's looking for a new CEO. I put my name in, I applied. I didn't want to be the CEO, but I'm one of those people that says, what if somebody comes in and blows up things I believe in? Who do I have to blame? So about midway through the process, I got cut and I was super relieved because I wasn't going to be the CEO. And in June of 2011, the board was interviewing 3 finalist candidates. It was the last Friday of the school year. And I got a call from the CEO's office saying, come downtown, we need to see you immediately. And I remember thinking to myself, I'm getting fired. They hired somebody and I'm out. And I had just signed on a house in Cleveland that day. My wife and I had just bought our house. I called my wife and said, do not start unpacking. Do not start celebrating. I think I'm out of a job. So Peter Raskin at the time came out to where I was because I couldn't leave what I was doing. We were doing academic planning. And I said, there's no academic emergency on the last Friday of school. Like, this is not possible. So he came out and he said, you don't know why I'm here. And I said, well, I hope not. And he said, the board doesn't want the 3 finalists. And so they want you to be interim and they're going to start the search all over. So the other thing you probably know about me is that I'm a go big or go home person. And so I said, I don't actually think it's in the district's best interest to have another interim for another year. And it's certainly not in mine. You already signaled that I'm not the person. So why would I hold down the fort for you? Give me the job. Give it to me on a 1-year, no frill, you can fire me contract. And if I can't do the job, replace me. And to my huge surprise, the board and the mayor said yes. So I went home Friday with this dare, and I came back Tuesday as the announced CEO. So I was the CEO for the perfect storm because that continuous improvement evaporated as I knew it would into an academic watch that year. We were broke. We had just laid off 1,400 people. And I actually had to bring people back because we had laid off so many people, we couldn't physically operate. We would violate fire laws by putting too many people in rooms. And we had no public trust. We hadn't passed a levy in 16 years, and I'm the CEO. Surprise. And so that first year, really, again, I set 3 personal goals. The first was that I knew I could demonstrate that we could improve what was going to be Ohio's worst performing school district. And I could prove that and show that. The second is, but when we do, it has to matter. It has to matter that if you have a diploma, that diploma leads to something next. To quote one of my recent graduates, student speakers, we didn't come this far just to get this far. And it had to lead to something next. And then the third is that while I know we can do it, and while I know it can matter, we also have to urgently address that it shouldn't be this hard in the first place, and that we have to make the system work better. So those are my 3 goals coming in as CEO. So goal 1, we've got to be able to improve the worst performing school district. So in my first year, as I'm trying to figure out, well, I knew academics wasn't the answer. I just looked at all of my CAO work blow up because systems didn't work. And so we went to work on the Cleveland plan. And the Cleveland plan really was focused on 3 things. a theory of action that parents choose their schools. I saw Alan Roskim on the roster, one of our great partners from Breakthrough. Parents were choosing schools whether the district let them or not. So let's get into the choice game and let's partner with high quality choosers. Second is that schools should do the education. When I was the CAO, I actually told schools who you got as a faculty, what subject they would teach, how much money you got, what your plan was, and then I blamed you if it didn't work. So let's put all that power back to the school so that we can hold the school accountable and turn the district into a support center. So parents choose, schools educate, district supports. If you know nothing else about the Cleveland plan, you know the Cleveland plan. So it took us that full year to put that in place, and predictably in that year, we dropped to the equivalent of an F, and actually Ohio's worst performing school district, proving that we actually needed the Cleveland plan. Fortunately, we got the Cleveland plan. You know, it was bipartisan support. It was a Republican governor with a Democratic mayor. It was charters with unions. It was everything it wasn't supposed to be. And Governor Kasich signed it into law in July of 2012 as I'm starting my second year, which then let us go out and pass the first tax issue that November that we passed in 16 years. So from 2012 to 2016, it really was about putting in place all of the elements of the Cleveland plan. And over that period of time, if you go back and look at our report cards, or if you go back and look at my State of the Schools addresses, we went from being Ohio's worst performing school district to one of Ohio's fastest improving school districts. Now, we are not the top performer, and I'm not suggesting in any way that there's not a lot more to do, but goal one is met. We can successfully increase and improve Ohio's worst performing school district. Graduation rates by 2016 were up almost 20 percentage points. By the end of the pandemic, it was up to 80.9%, which is 3 points below the national average for all high school graduates. So we had proven that we could get kids to the goal, but we didn't go this far just to get this far. It's got to matter. And so in 2016, we really started working on how do you make that happen. I had a student, I was at the Landmark Diner on St. Clair having breakfast one day, and I look over and there's a student sitting in the booth who I knew was supposed to be at Morehouse College. He was a senior at Morehouse, so he had been successful for 3 years. It wasn't an academic issue. And I went over to him and I said, what are you doing here? And he said, well, Mr. Gordon, I dropped out. I was $800 short. So the good news for that kid is that we got him into Cleveland State. He finished, he has his degree. He works here in this community now. He's very successful, but no one's future should depend on where I chose to have breakfast this morning. And so we have to make it matter at the end of the day. And so we started exploring promise programs. You've heard of them, the Pittsburgh Promise, the Kalamazoo Promise. There are other versions of it. And the goals of those are to make sure that obviously more kids get to and through college, but also to stabilize enrollment and actually attract middle-class families back into communities like ours so that you start to disrupt the cycle of poverty. And the problem we were seeing with those promise programs is they were doing exactly that for the middle class. Middle class kids who came back to the city and had a sufficient education were going forward, but the people actually in the city weren't getting those scholarships. So we spent literally more than 3 years going through this process to finally bring what you now know as Say Yes Cleveland to town. That included this community raising now almost $100 million in an endowment against a $125 million goal, which, by the way, I will make sure we finish by the end of this year. Is my last thing I do for CMSD. But $100 million set aside so that there are scholarships for every graduate who lives in the district and goes 4 years to high school here for the next 25 years. And the theory of action is actually an economic model. More kids get more degrees and stay in Cleveland through our partnership with College Now, where they are mentored and connected to Cleveland, means they pay more taxes and they draw less from the social services system. And over 2 generations, we disrupt what has been a suffocating poverty problem in this city. So by 2019, we have it. It's going really well. We had our first increase in college graduation rates. And then the pandemic, of course, hits. So I've got goal 2. It matters now. You got that diploma. We can do something with that diploma. But goal 3, we got to make it easier, became even more urgent with the pandemic. So the reason we picked Say Yes is because of the wraparound supports. The scholarship is the sexy part. Hey, you get to go to college tuition free. But the most important part is having somebody whose full-time job is to disrupt the barriers that make it hard for you to be a student and your family to participate in school. So that's our family support specialists that are in every one of our school buildings. That's the legal services through our partnership with the Bar Association and the Legal Aid Society. That's our integrated health efforts for behavioral and physical health that we're working to expand citywide. That's the PACE program to make sure our students have a pathway and see jobs that they can do that they didn't even know existed. That's our one-to-one digital divide efforts with every student now having a device and every graduate leaving with a device. For the second year in a row now, every single graduate leaves with their own device to take on to work or college. It's all of these things that we have to disrupt to make sure that it's easier to be a kid and a student in this city, and that all of the things I've talked about ahead of time shouldn't have to be so hard. And it's emerging out of that pandemic, which made it even worse. So there's a couple of good news things here. While the pandemic hurt college going, and then the booming economy coming out further hurt it, because there's lots of history in our country that when the economy is good and there's money in your pocket, you stop going to school. So school access rates dropped, but persistence rates for Say Yes students, and there's now 2,300 Say Yes students in college today. The persistence rate of staying in college is now up to 67%, which is approaching the national average for all students, not just students in poverty, not just minority, not just first gen, but all students, which is in about the 70% persistence. We're closing that gap. It's working. So what's the future for CMSD? From my point of view, what got us here won't get us there. So if I had been staying in the role, you would be seeing a shift in strategy that you will also be seeing, I'm certain, with Dr. Morgan. All of what I've described for you was an education strategy. It was an education strategy championed by lots of people on this call, and it worked. We moved the graduation rate despite the fact that poverty didn't change, that housing stability hasn't improved, that lead poisoning is still a challenge in our community, that digital disconnect is still one of the worst in the country here. But if we are going to continue to accelerate and get gains, we must shift from an education agenda to a youth and family agenda. We have to make it easier for a kid in this community to be a kid. You cannot feel unsafe on your streets. You cannot be poisoned in your home. You cannot wonder where you're going to sleep. You cannot wonder where you're getting food. You cannot use ER as your primary health care. We have to make it easier to be a kid in this community if that kid is going to participate in school in the way that we know they can and should. And so I've been really advocating, as I'm transitioning, that we shift our community's focus to a youth and family agenda. And Mayor Bibb, as you likely know, has hired a chief of youth and family success. And I've also been realigning the district around this notion that we play a role in that youth agenda. I also am really challenging us that, unfortunately, coming out of the pandemic, America's schools have snapped back to what they were pre-pandemic, and America's schools do not match America. In fact, I would argue America's schools are actually at war with America. Let me tell you this story that I talked about with Garrett Morgan kids. So I had Garrett Morgan high school students that I was sitting with, and I said, what do you think would happen if I let you use your cell phone when you took your state tests? And the first thing they said is, well, that's cheating. And I said, well, tell me why that's cheating. Well, because you're not allowed. And I said, okay, that's fair. You're following the rules. I appreciate that. So let me ask you another question. You step outside of the school and you wonder about a question that you don't know the answer that you're going to do. You're standing right outside of the school. What do? Well, we get out our phone and look it up. And I said, so if you turn around and walk back inside school, that thing that you do and will do the whole rest of your life is cheating. But if you turn around and walk outside of this school, it's a smart strategy to find information. America's schools are not right now training kids for the world they're going to live in. We're training them to do stuff that they will not need to do. What if instead we actually made sure you knew how to look up information and you knew what to do with it? That you knew the transferable skills, how to take something from one project to the next, from your work to your personal. All of those, workplace skills, we call them transferable skills, and that you knew how to find credible academic content and use it. And so we have in the district been really working on a bold new vision with the notion that the master's tools will never dismantle the master's house. Audre Lorde at her best. That the tools that we are currently using from a system that no longer matches actually how we live in our world is not going to prepare the next generation. And so we have a tremendous bold new vision that we are focused on here in the district. Pursuing a more fair, just, and good system of education. This is an equity issue for minority, poor, first-gen children, but that our learners should be engaged in academically complex tasks that are worth their time and struggle, and that they should demonstrate their learning in real ways like we do in the real world, and that it should be of both academic content and transferable skills. And here's the kicker, it should be fun. It should be in a joyful and adventurous environment. You're actually supposed to like to learn. And so the system is set up really well to continue its forward momentum. The final thing I'd say about the system, and then I'll briefly mention my next opportunity before questions, is that the system has proven already what we know about the pandemic. The pandemic hurt us badly. Kids did not learn to read on time, and I said on time. We did not lose learning, we lost time. So they still can learn to read, but you may not know this if you're not trained in it. Our first language skills, which lead to reading, come from watching people produce language. How do you watch people produce language when you can't see their mouth? Which is exactly what happened for 2 years. And so we knew we were going to see low early literacy scores, and sure enough, we did. We also knew that we lost high school students to the workforce, because while we were all sitting home being told to work from home or not to work, the people who were working were my kids and my families. They were the people that were making sure the boxes that got sent to our house because we weren't going to the store got to our house, that the essential services were open and sanitary. They were the ones still going to work, making the world run, while we were all staying at home, depending on people to make the world run. And people have said to me, well, yeah, but those were students that were, I call them reluctant learners. They were likely to drop out anyway. Not true. We lost valedictorians, we lost salutatorians, we lost people that had to make work a priority for their family. And so our graduation rate also took a hit at about 75% after being nearly 81. But the other thing that is true about CMSD coming out of the pandemic, just as it was coming in, is that on Ohio's growth measure, we ranked 12 out of 612, 12th in the state on student growth. And on Ohio's gap closing measure, we had the largest gap closing for students of color and students in poverty of any urban in Ohio. And so just like before the pandemic, yes, our students start with some disadvantage, but we know how to accelerate. And so the district has the momentum to keeping it forward. And I'm really, really pleased with the appointment of Dr. Morgan, my successor. I actually hired Dr. Morgan into CMSD back in 2014 in his first central office role. He did a great job. He's a talented person. He's got the skills, and he's got the professional humility to know that all of these complex problems that we've been talking about don't come with simple solutions. So he's not going to show up with a magic wand and just make it all go away. He's going to continue to dig in and figure out how we keep moving this organization and our kids and our community forward. And I'm really, really pleased that he's our next CEO. For me, you know that I have accepted a great opportunity at Cuyahoga Community College. I think I saw Dave Kuntz on here and some other Tri-C colleagues. Honestly, if somebody had said, write the job you want and we'll give it to you, I couldn't have dreamed of this. But I'm a person that believes that if you leave things alone, that it will sort itself out. And so I kind of buffed a lot of stuff over that. Hey, come do this. Hey, come do that. And I just kept saying, no, 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 no. And then something will come. So I've been invited to do two very large but exciting bodies of work. The first is student development, where I'm going to be able to, in my words, interrogate. I believe that systems break, people don't. So I am going to try to understand what makes it easy or hard to get into Cuyahoga Community College, what makes it easy or hard to succeed and get through Cuyahoga Community College, and what makes it easy or hard to successfully leave Cuyahoga Community College. And then I get to help redesign those barriers and micro barriers that are the hards to make it easier and easier. Very much like the passionate work we've been doing here in Cleveland. And for many of the kids that came right from my system, but now with students who elected to go to the college, not students who were compulsory by law. So really excited to get to know our students at a very different level and understand their motivations, and then what either accelerates or extinguishes those motivations as they try to move through Tri-C. And then the other half is the educational pipeline. And President Baston has challenged me to help him think about revisioning the role of community colleges in our country. A bold, bold vision about what is the community college role in early childhood? What is the the college's role in K-12? What is the college's role in bachelor degree? And what's the college's role in post-bachelor degree? And not thinking of community college as the plug in from high school or the workforce and the plug out to the workforce or four-year college, but actually as a powerful engine for the entire K-16 or K life spectrum. So I'm really excited about it. I love the boldness of the vision to reposition not just Tri-C, but all community colleges as important beyond the technical role they play. And it allows me to continue to work in Cleveland's educational ecosystem without being in the way of CMSD as it continues to move forward. So Marianne, I think that's almost exactly 20 minutes on the spot, 16 plus the district's future and mine, all in 20 minutes. I'll turn it back to you or Angela for some time for questions and answers.
That's great. Yeah, we challenged you and you met that challenge. So we appreciate that. It's incredible to hear your journey. And we got a few questions keep coming in. So one is, what advice would you give to your successor, knowing kind of the landscape and where you hope for it to head?
There's actually a piece of advice for my successor, and there's a piece of advice for all of you on here that I would also give my successor. So for all of us, give him the chance to be the best him that he can be, and do not hold him accountable for being me. I've been here for 16 years, and people have been super kind about all of the things I've accomplished, but there are also a lot of people who have worked with me and know that it's not always easy. There's a phrase, dead people are easy to love, they make so few mistakes. Do not hold him accountable for being me. Let him be the best him he can be, and give him the chance to succeed. And for him, I have said very directly, in addition to all the smart leadership stuff that we all do, listen to and trust the kids. All of the best stuff that has come out of this has been informed when I brought it to my students and said, here's what I'm wondering about. Here's what I don't understand. Tell me what you know. Listen to, ask, listen to, and trust the kids. And that's not at the exclusion of all of the smart academic trained people that we all are, but we have to get as close to those we're trying to serve as possible, so that we can understand deeply. And this is what I was saying about what's the motivation of that Tri-C student. I would argue, I bet most of us have an assumption, but we don't actually know. Let's get as close to that as possible, and let's trust their answers, because they really do know.
Of all the things that you've done and seen and been a part of, what are you most proud looking back?
So I just finished 25 graduations. We had 31, but there were 6 that either I had a conflict or overlapped or something. And it is every one of those young people that walked across that stage. And knowing that I played a small part in that, that's what it's about. And it's about that we didn't come this far just to get this far. So it is about what they do next. But really it is for me. I've always said to my team, we cannot behave as a district of 36,000 students one time. We have to behave as a district of one student 36,000 times. So how many times did we succeed? And in the contrary of that is one of my biggest disappointments is for all that we've accomplished, there are kids that were under my watch their whole school career who we did not succeed for them. And I think it's important to be able to name and remember that we have more work to do for the kids that didn't walk across that stage. So for me, it's the head count. And I've estimated that I've probably presided over 350 graduations over the past 16 years and thousands of students. But that also means that students that should have been there that weren't. And so for me, it's a both proud and a reminder of our sacred responsibility in these kinds of jobs.
So much has changed from when you took on the role, and you referenced this kind of in the way that schools are educating students. One of those is artificial intelligence and chatbots. So what are your perspectives on that, and how do you think those tools can help level the playing field for under-resourced schools and school systems?
Yeah, I'm actually really glad that somebody asked this question because I'm actively working to try to get engaged in a national network of those of us who are going to figure out AI at its best instead of doing what schools and urban schools usually do, which is block out the real world because we don't know what to do with it. So we're doing a few things, really exciting things in AI. First of all, if you go back to my very first State of the Schools speech, I actually introduced a tool that was one of the earliest versions of AI to the audience there and let them know that kids were already using it. It was called Wolfram Alpha. It's completely out of style now, or like outdated, but it could solve all of the math problems that kids were being asked to do, and then they could just copy them down, right? This has existed for a long time, but what we're doing right now, a few things. One is we have a few teachers that are experimenting with AI lesson planning, where they're telling artificial intelligence what they want in a lesson plan, what grade levels, what standards, what kind of differentiation, and it's writing it for them. And the theory of action is, what if we could get to like a Blue Apron where you get the recipe and all the ingredients and all you do is spend time cooking really well and really helping teachers spend less time having to create all the plans and a lot more time in lesson study and implementation. So we're tinkering there. We're using a tutoring tool called Amira. Amira is on a tablet. She's I don't know what you call them, emoji or something. But the student actually reads to Amira. Second graders love it. We're testing it K through 3, but the second graders are on fire with Amira. They read to Amira. Amira already knows the book. It listens and it says, "Oh, Angela, let's pause and sound out that word." Live, and it's all AI intelligence out of Carnegie Mellon. There is not a single live body sitting behind it. And we're seeing huge recovery results in high dose tutoring with that technology. And then we're looking at, with a really exciting pilot we have with the Cleveland Clinic, we're actually prototyping, replicating their graduate level virtual and augmented reality anatomy courses at Cleveland School of Science and Medicine with an eye of replicating system-wide using the Oculate devices where the students are actually taking graduate level anatomy in high school through artificial intelligence. So those are 3 opportunities here. Now, we do have to also be careful about all the things students can do that we can't control. But part of what we've got to do is help students understand in these transferable skills, what is the good use of these technologies towards your longer goals, to your other projects. And so really trying to find some ways that we can start using them for good instead of waiting until we're the last ones at the table.
That's very interesting. I think we could have another leader lunch break just on that topic as well. So you mentioned humanware and you mentioned, students first. And so one particular question is around students where English is not their second language or first language. So what actions has CMSD taken to improve the educational outcomes for these students?
Yeah, so English learners, we have a rising and changing population of English learners. I think first it's really important to make sure that you start with a philosophy of what's important when approaching an English learner community, an immigrant, a refugee, when they're coming here. And for us, that is that our job is to help young people and their families, but certainly young people, access English language and American culture while protecting their home language and home culture. Ours is not to tell them to abandon their culture and their language and their heritage in place of, and so approach matters for us. That then means that we have to find ways to bridge those gaps. And it's also, again, I said, get as close to the person you're trying to help. You have to understand who you're helping. Is this a immigrant family that was well educated in their own language, which is a different approach to helping them acquire academic English? Or is this somebody who maybe had no access to education in their home country and home language, which means they're still learning the words for academic language in their language and must also get it for English learners? And so we have to have a very differentiated approach. We also work with, I think I saw some of our refugee response friends here, but we work with a number of partners to make sure that we have a plan in place for the whole family, that we're working with community agencies. We're trying to get really smart about who are the educated families that we can actually hire so that we have live translators and don't have to rely on, the telephone kind of translating. Again, thinking about what is the role of high dose tutoring, because also think about being a high school student who has to graduate and doesn't know any English, right? And in Ohio, you have to pass all of your state exams in English and you have to pass an English proficiency test. You can't take the exam in your home language in this state, which I think is unfortunate, but is a reality. So we have to have a kind of a holistic point of view of what is the primary instruction, what is the high dose tutoring, and what are the supports that wrap around that student and their family, and how do you differentiate that based on the assets they already bring with them, as opposed to thinking of language access as somehow a deficit. And I would say there are people way smarter about this than I am who actually do the work.
Let's talk a little bit about collaboration and the partnerships that you've had to form and create to get things accomplished. What role did collaboration play in the most dramatic way as you kind of look back, and where can we help going forward?
Well, I mean, I think if you scroll through the participant list, almost everybody has been a partner in some way over the years. And I would tell you that one of the things that my peers have said to me over the course of the years, two things. One is that we couldn't do that in our city, which to me, I always say, well, then don't bother coming and looking here, because if you already know you can't do what we're doing, why would you waste your time? And the second is they don't actually believe it. So I think I saw Molly Fagali on True to You as an example, where we have 2 adults for every 12 eighth graders citywide every year. And when I say that to my peers, they say, that's not true. And I said, well, yeah, actually it is. Or our 3 R's program, one of our longest, with legal professionals working in every 8th and 11th grade classroom in the district every year. No, that's not true. That's not possible. Well, yeah, in Cleveland it is. So part of it is we have a DNA for it here that I recognized early when I moved here. But what was wrong was that the partners had gotten to a point where they had no confidence in the district, and the district employees, who were really hardworking people, felt beat up by the partners through this kind of disdain of, well, you stupid people don't even know what you're doing, so we need to come in and fix you. And then so there was this relationship of, we're only coming if we can fix you. Well, we don't need fixed, leave us alone. And so we had to reset and rebuild trust. It actually happened, again, I think I saw Alan Roscom here. For me, it actually happened from a 7th grade student that I've never met. So I got a call put through to the CAO's office one day with this really upset 7th grade boy. And, he was so upset that he could almost not talk. And he said, "You're the superintendent, aren't you?" And I didn't bother to say, "Well, no, I'm not." I wanted to hear what was going on. And he said, "My principal won't listen and my teacher won't listen. And this is what's going on." And I finally got him calmed down. And I said, "Okay, well, we can fix this." I said, "So where do you go to school?" And he said, "Well, I go to something charter school." And I don't even remember which one it was. And I said, "Well, oh, I'm so sorry. I can't help you." And he goes, "You're the superintendent. You're supposed to help." And I remember thinking, you know what? He's right. It should not matter where he goes to school. It should matter that the kid needs help. And my job right now is to connect with that partner and figure it out. And that's just one example of what drove me to say, let's stop competing about kids and let's start making sure that all of us that can do well by kids do it together. 3 for CLE. Rachel, I see you here who helped us with that. Public-private partnership, because we finally stopped saying, you shouldn't be doing preschool, we should be doing preschool. And when I said, aren't there enough kids that need great preschool? And we all agreed, yep, let's partner, And so it was a trust reset, but it really is a part of our DNA now. And everything CMSD has done. Megan Marnichek's here, who leads the Transformation Alliance, which is a collaboration that's kept the Cleveland Plan Partnership together. We call it the Coalition, for more than 11 years. I would tell you that's the secret sauce in this town. The other thing I would say tangentially is this is also a town that's not fickle. Most towns, most cities, when you go there, cities get excited about, oh, we have to fix education. And then 2 years later, oh, wait, no, we got to help the elderly. And then, oh, wait, we got to go help the ill. Oh, wait, we got to go help the fill in the blank. Cleveland has been serious about we will not thrive without a great educational core. From the day I came to town in 2007, it's so embedded that it's been in Greater Cleveland Partnership's strategic plan. K-12 has been in their strategic plan for the entire 16 years I've been here. So we have a secret sauce in this town, and it's the people on these calls.
Well, and I know we are thrilled to see you continue your work in Cleveland. And so we on the call want to know, how can we best support your work at Tri-C in this next step?
That's a great question, and I don't know. The beauty part of this role is when I started asking questions of Dr. Baston, he kept saying, I don't know, we can't figure that out until you're here. I don't know, we can't figure that out till you're here. So he really is inviting me to help him think from blue sky, clean, and also in a personal way, because I am trying to get better at work-life balance in this change. I'm taking July off. And so check back in August when I actually start the new role, because I've been very careful not to start the role until it's time to start the role. But stay tuned, because just like I know we need partnerships here, I know that Tri-C understands we need partnerships there. And what's already great, we're going to make even better.
That's wonderful. Well, thank you so much, Eric. We really appreciate your time today, and we wish you so much luck with the next chapter. We can't wait to see what your leadership can do. So
thank you, everyone. Thanks for taking time for your lunch with us today. And
Eric,
we'll see a lot of you at the 4th Street Takeover tomorrow night.
Great. Thank you, Eric. I think your first challenge is going to be to learn what to do with several days of vacation. I know it's something you haven't seen for many, many years. This has been just truly inspirational. You are a model leader, and this community is so incredibly benefited to have your presence here. So thank you for all that you do. You've touched thousands of lives already, and we're thrilled that you get the opportunity to touch thousands more. So thank you for everything. Enjoy your vacation, and I hope that everyone on this call enjoys a relaxing 4th of July long holiday weekend.